How do safe places contribute to inclusion?
I don't think you can really be inclusive if you're not offering safety. It has to be a marriage of HR and leadership. Workplaces should be inclusive and they should be relaxed in the sense that we can go in and interact. Get a job done, but interact. So it's one bad joke. Ha ha ha, so-and-so's out of touch, he's an old boy, he's not politically correct. So we let it go. But then it becomes, it's a daily thing. And the jokes continue. And they become offensive and insulting, and it turns into bullying, in actual fact. But if you pulled them up on it from the beginning and said, look, knock it off. We're not that kind of outfit. Not here. It can be done nicely, firmly, with boundaries, calmly. You can have policy to back you up, which is always great. But I think it's a conversation. I think it's just talking.
Welcome to Ignited podcast series where we amplify LGBT voices and we explore stories that matter. Today we are diving into a crucial topic for those in the workforce, creating inclusive and welcoming workspaces where everyone can thrive. Safe spaces, brave spaces. I'm Fanis Athanasiadis, and today we are hosting Ms. Katerina Andreou, HR expert, founder of HR Innovate, who has been at the forefront of helping companies create inclusive cultures. Katerina, thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with some basic questions. How do safe places contribute to inclusion?
I don't think you can really be inclusive if you're not offering safety. I think it's, there's a conflict there. So I can't be an employer and push an agenda of inclusion. I can't talk about inclusion if I'm not offering people the safety to come to work and have their needs met, whatever those needs are, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, it depends on what it is. But I definitely have to be sure that I'm offering safety before I can be truly inclusive. And that starts from the beginning. So that's from onboarding, the actual recruitment, the way you advertise your vacancy. I mean, it's really right back. It doesn't even start when somebody comes to work. It's before you've even met them and hired them.
How does this work?
So,
let's say those early stages that you mentioned.
I mean, it has to be a marriage of HR and leadership. You can't have HR without the leadership team being on board and aligned with HR. So the two have to have a vision that guarantees safety, doesn't just talk about it, guarantees it. They have an inclusion and diversity agenda that they both subscribe to. Not just, to be on trend, not a tokenistic political thing, but something authentic. And it usually starts from the founders or the board. It has to be something that comes from the top down. So when they have a vacancy, when they're looking at their workforce, the way they'll advertise, the way they will analyze a job description and decide on fit and team dynamics and all the rest of it will be in the ad. The language you use, your terms of reference, and then how people are treated from the minute they come for an interview. So you have to be sure that you're ready for people, that you've thought about needs that somebody might have, physical needs. Do you have disabled access? Have you provided water? Have you checked the temperature? Have you asked people before the interview if there's anything they need? There's a lot that goes into it, but if you have an inclusion and diversity agenda, and you are that way inclined, these will be natural sort of checklists that somebody goes through if they're in HR or the leadership team. So I know when I come for an interview how inclusive you are.
That's great. So policy matters, of course, but what about the microenvironments in a workspace? We can have some rules, of course, and we agree on this, but finally, what about microaggression and behaviors that might escape those rules?
I mean, I don't know. I think that there has to be transparency and directness. I'm not a fan of, people hiding behind lots of policy and documents and lots of procedure. I think it should be challenged directly. I think managers and people in leadership positions and in HR have more of a responsibility to ensure that subordinates, that team dynamics are healthy, and where there's toxicity or where somebody's language perhaps, or there are microaggressive behaviors, that things are tackled quick. They're not left to fester. Because the problem is, if they're not tackled quickly and directly, there's a risk that they'll become the norm. So it's one bad joke. Ha, 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 so-and-so's out of touch. He's an old boy. He's not politically correct. So we let it go. But then it becomes, it's a daily thing. And then we hire younger people, or we hire people with a physical disability, or we hire a trans employee, or whatever it could be. And the jokes continue. And they become offensive and insulting, and it turns into bullying, in actual fact. Now, that person may not know they're a bully yet. But if you pulled them up on it from the beginning and said, look, knock it off. We're not that kind of outfit. Not here. It can be done nicely, firmly, with boundaries, calmly. You can have policy to back you up, which is always great. But I think it's a conversation. I think it's just talking.
And what I've been thinking is about how sometimes being correct leaves some things unsaid.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that I appreciate about Brave Spaces.
Yeah.
To have the courage and also to feel empowered in your environment to speak what you have to say and negotiate sometimes the boundaries, or even push them not to cause trouble or to offend someone just because they are there, and we have to find our own boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's dialogue. And it's relational. So it's how we relate to each other. We spend all these hours together in the same space. We're all supposed to be on the same track for the same target or vision, whatever the company is. So we should be able to push that boundary or say how we feel. Or, if I can't tell that direct colleague, I should be able to go to HR or my manager and say, this step needs to be taken, or this initiative, or I felt like this after that was dealt with that way. Can you facilitate maybe a 3-way discussion? There's so many forms of mentorship and mediation that skilled communicators in HR can do on site with employees to have that bravery and to empower them so that they understand that it isn't just a safe space, but here we talk, we really talk. We don't just, it's walking the walk as well.
All this sounds mesmerizing, but how can someone know that this is the place that all this is possible? I mean, as an employee.
Well, I think that, again, starting with founders and the leadership team, because it all it's like a waterfall effect from the top. I think it should be explicit. I don't know why you wouldn't be proud of that as an organization, why it wouldn't be on your website, on your social media. I think it should be in your mission statement. I think that you as an employer, as a company, as a thriving enterprise or a startup even, that you have a responsibility to your local community to make it clear what you stand for. So when I go for a job ad and I decide to apply, I should go on your website and see that you're, rainbow friendly, that you've got disabled access, that you offer opportunities to people over the age of 50. There are all sorts of schemes and things people can do on social media now using technology to fully illuminate how far their agenda can go. So then I know who I'm joining. Maybe I'm prouder to join them.
So it's part of the brand of its company.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the brand. Yeah, exactly.
But there is something more than that. Since we are talking about people, of course, since we are talking about companies branding, we can't escape the term. Yeah. But it's also a place where people work and spend a lot of time and create relationships, and maybe will stay for years and invest an important part of their lives in those organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think I read somewhere that by the time we die, we'll have spent over a third of our life at work. So you need to know that, if you spent that massive section of your life more with your colleagues than actually with your own family, that you've done something with it, something authentic. I can't think of anything worse than spending over a third of my life pretending to be something that I'm not, or feeling ashamed, or feeling like I have to hide, or, it's there's no need. Workplaces should be inclusive and they should be relaxed in the sense that we can go in and interact, get a job done, but interact.
Have you seen any workspaces that include all the things that you have mentioned so far, all these policies and also, let's say, the the practical steps to create such environments?
Yeah. I mean, I was very lucky to work in the non-profit sector, NGOs as well. I worked in the government sector, all in the UK. But I always felt really proud to be affiliated with any service because it was in our charter. It was on the websites. It was in the small print in the job description. We talked about stuff like that at interview. There was ethnic monitoring. So they would send us data monitoring forms to know how we identified. Because the UK, especially back then, they were really trying hard to gather data on how many mixes and heritage, how many heritage sites and people that they were coming to the UK from multiple cultures. So they were recording it and they wanted to know how you see yourself. Like if I look at you and think you're white, do you feel white as a half Cypriot, half British as I am, but born in Africa? What do you identify as? Nobody had ever asked me that question before. I was lucky that I worked in services where they made it super clear from the beginning that they were going to advocate and champion inclusion and diversity. And you weren't actually going to be a great fit if you weren't equally passionate. So I met the most incredible people in HR, my fellow colleagues, and it always left me with a sense of it's a bit like being a kid thinking, yeah, that's who I want to be when I grow up. I always thought if ever I'm an employer, if ever I go the entrepreneur route, that's going to be my mission. I need to make money. Sure, I need to be in a corporate environment sometimes, whatever, but I'm always going to champion those basic values. So it stays with you.
Why would you want to follow these values? What inspired you finally so far?
I think even as a kid, I was very cognizant of people that were marginalized or on the sidelines because we lived in different countries. Some were, during wars or poverty. So I think growing up, I was exposed to a lot of very raw, difficult situations. I was a huge reader as well, so I read probably above my age level, read some rather dramatic stuff that left an imprint. And I think being from two cultures and relatively religionless, countryless, no sense of home, I understood what it might feel like to be on the outside looking in. And then joining those services and being in child protection as I was and seeing communities and individuals struggle to try to take part, I think that's what left the indelible on me. And then I met the most incredible people in my working life in these environments that had dedicated their entire careers, their whole, even outside work. Even then, they were still championing the underdog or trying to change the status quo. They could have just sat back, made a packet, and decided it wasn't their problem. But I love the fact that they didn't. And when I do step forward and advocate, I feel like I'm contributing. You might not always win and you can't change the world in a day, but
you never know.
Well, you never know. And it could be one thing that you do or say that can change the course of someone else's life if you just try. What I don't understand are people that don't try. That I don't understand. I don't understand why you would be, blessed to be here on the planet. You've got this life. It's a short ride. You get older and older and you see that life can be cruel. So why wouldn't you do your best not to be a jerk? I don't understand that. It's like some people wake up and decide they're just going to be a jerk. I think it's nicer to wake up and do your best, not to do harm, and try. And it feels better. I think it's a higher standard of living that money cannot buy or material things.
And it humanizes our environments.
It's massive. Yeah. It's the game changer in societies, I think. It's what makes sure that we restore our humanity, maintain it, and we take care of the young that are coming up.
As an HR expert, you definitely know that people of course, might be seeking money, success, but
Yeah.
at some point, for most people, there is an end to this. There is some need for meaning,
Yeah.
or a purpose, what they're doing. They need to believe to what they do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they cannot keep up with this.
Yeah. And also you find out through your colleagues, through your friends as you age, that life doesn't discriminate. So you might have the best job, the best money, you might work for a brand, you might have achieved X, Y, and Z on your checklist when you were 20. But at some point we will all know loss. We will all know serious bereavement. We will all know serious health issues. It doesn't discriminate. So suddenly whether you've got money or not won't matter.
Yeah.
And you'll know what it feels like to be on the outside looking in or to be part of a minority that's, So I think if you start at work encouraging the community, encouraging your workforce, being there to push an agenda that will take care of people rather than isolate and ostracize and dictate what they should be, I think it ultimately will level up our societies and hopefully make for peaceful times rather than what we've seen so far.
Let's reason this.
It's very ambitious, I know.
Very ambitious. So let's move now to another topic and discuss about how may handle discrimination incidents. Even in a safe place, discrimination incidents can occur.
Yes.
How do we handle the situations?
I think policy is handy there. Unfortunately, we do need that for governance and compliance, and generally to have a framework that in black and white makes it super clear that when people step outside the lines, this is how it's dealt with. I think that's comforting for everybody. And I think, again, it's part of that branding and making it clear. So I think you have whistleblowing processes where people anonymously, safely can report incidents. I think HR should have an open door policy and anyone can go and speak to them. I think training. There's tons of sensitivity training. There's anti-discriminatory practice, reflective practice. There's tons of types of training that you can do online and offline that you can incorporate with team building events. So you'll solidify a team and hopefully unite them in a mindset that encourages non-discriminatory practice and behavior in the workplace. So these are initiatives. Again, it has to be, the cost, the budget, the agenda has to be pushed from up top. So it needs to be leadership-led with HR. And what it needs to be, apart from being authentic, obviously, it needs to be rolled out across a workforce. So it doesn't mean because you've got a manager, because you are a manager, or you have a manager who says, I'm too busy, or, I've done so much training, I know everything, I'm 50. No. Practice changes, new data. We all need to refresh. Sometimes we get a little stagnant in our beliefs, or we need challenging, and we need to know that we're in a brave space to do that. So even if you are a senior manager and you've done lots of training in the past, I want you to go again. Do training with your younger subordinates and discuss how things have changed since you did this training when you were 25, what it's like for them now being young, and where the agenda is. So there's lots of provocative but hopefully reassuring initiatives and things that you can do. There's CSR events in your community. It's endless what people can do if they have the will, the spirit, and the money, because you need the approval for budgets, obviously. But if leadership are behind it, why not?
Do you have any tips to suggest if an LGBT person, for example, faces any situation in their workspace and they need to report? How should they handle? How should they? Which are the steps they should follow to be, let's say, in line with what is required by an HR expert?
I think they have to report it as soon as they possibly can. I know it's difficult. Sometimes it's easier to log things and write them down before you go and speak. It depends how upsetting and what the nature is, but I think they have to report it as soon as possible verbally to HR, to their line manager, whoever they feel most comfortable in the first instance. Managers and HR should be equipped to take a complaint of that nature. So it shouldn't matter whether I go to my hiring manager or my HR, but I should be able to go and say, this happened. At some point, I'm going to have to put it in writing so that I've got everything transparently. And you do need a log of incidents, how it happened, who was present, and then it has to be investigated. But it needs to be investigated sensitively and with that person's consent. So if they say, this was enough, you've given me comfort, I know you're going to deal with it, I don't want to go further, that should be respected. It depends on the nature as well, because if it's a hate crime, which is what we have sometimes, and we know that there are horror stories in workplaces and elsewhere, then it may have to be escalated. There have to be disciplinary procedures. So everybody needs to be clear. If you come and report an incident where you've been offended, marginalized, discriminated against, we can discuss it, we can go forward. If you come and tell me that you have been physically or sexually in any way harassed or assaulted, then we will escalate disciplinary procedures against that person. And it needs to be very firm, calm. It doesn't need to be drama or more aggression, because that person needs to be supported, because this transgression happens to them at work. Nobody goes to work to be made to feel that way or to be victimized. So the organization needs to take the lead, take the heat off them, and deal with the offender or whatever's happened, find out what happened. And then there have to be steps, tangible, visible steps to show that we don't tolerate this behavior. In Cyprus, I find we don't have enough of that. So you don't.
You mean the policies?
Yeah, we don't, and the confidentiality. It's so small in small towns, small places. It's very hard. Oh, I saw this, so they're trying to figure out who it was. People don't feel as safe as in larger countries or societies where I can use these mechanisms. But I'm 1 in 18 million. How are you going to find out it's me?
Yeah.
So, little things like that. Culture always is a game changer.
What do you usually recommend to companies that ask for your support in Cyprus?
For managing
your services, yes.
So, I always insist that if you don't have HR, that you outsource it. You need an HR component in any business. You have to start with your HR and your mission statement, and you should have a charter that identifies your inclusion and diversity agenda, approach, that's in with your brand. Large established brands usually have it, but it isn't about just having it. You also have to see it at a grassroots level. This brand is here in Cyprus. So we know that at some point in head office, New York, there's a manual somewhere that says this is how we deal with anti-discriminatory. But does Bumboy in HR know that? Was he trained? Does he care? Have we managed to filter down from New York through the brand that in Cyprus, in that office, in that team, this is how we do things? So I tell people, figure out your brand, your mission, your diversity and inclusion chapter should be in that. It should be part of your core. If you don't know what you stand for, I don't know how you're going to stay in business. And I don't know how you'll attract talent or good people, or how you'll do good in your neighborhood, in your community. Step out.
And read the manual.
Read the manual.
So in general, let's say are there any solid practices, any concrete practices in place in Cyprus nowadays?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to work in some amazing companies, not just internationals, but local Cypriot companies, which surprised me with their sensitivity and humanity, so that they might not have had perfect protocols and procedures and manuals yet, but they had a basic sensitivity and empathy for their fellow colleague. And everybody is very understanding, respectful. They bring me in for HR. They recognize the function. They ask good questions when they don't understand something I'm saying or doing. But everybody is involved in making the workplace healthy, happy. There's this concentration to not have a toxic workplace.
It's quite interesting because it's quite different from what you have already described previously about policies and structure. This is a very familiar place to be.
Yes. And these companies have done it so authentically. It came from within. Nobody was trained or had a manual or had a big brand behind them. They just weren't jerks. It literally was a nice founder a nice management team, and people that wanted to go to work and create happy places where people wanted to be. And that meant everybody, each to their own, handling life in their way, coming with their differences, everybody learning about those differences, acknowledging we're not all the same, but having that empathy. And that was amazing to me because it was completely natural. It had just come from within. So it wasn't something that had to be taught. The grounding was already there. So all I do in those situations is put it in a framework and a structure so that as new people join, the nature of that company, that good nature, is encapsulated in writing so that we know we all subscribe to this. And it's a joined upness that gives people that feeling that this place I join as part of a collective. It's not me on the outside because I have a piercing or a tattoo or this or whatever. So it's very nice.
I'm actually trying to imagine such place.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine it.
It is. And every time I go there, this particular company I'm thinking of, I've worked with on and off for, I guess, 8 years now. I look forward to going every time I go because I'm not expecting to be met with any defensiveness or aggression or any pushback, And people are nice. They're nice to each other. They go to work and they care about one another. They accommodate people with differences. They actively try to make their workplace easier. And nobody's hiding. It's all in the open. Everybody's just human. So it gives you even as an outside vendor, I love going there. And I think, this is a cool place to work.
So there are some initiatives, but when the management initiatives, let's say, are not that overdeveloped, is there sufficient legislation as backup?
I think we have a lot of legislation that, in Cyprus in particular, we're very good at ratifying things and not enforcing them and not going through the full. So I suspect in Cyprus there is a lot more legislation that we could sign up to. The issue we have in Cyprus is enforcing things because it's so small. So it's very difficult. I have a lot of candidates who say it's difficult for me to speak out and report something because I'm worried I might never work again because I work for so-and-so. Or, you know what I mean? It's that kind of, it's so small. You need a few champions, I think, to take that first step. So I love being, I don't mind being that person. And I try everywhere I go to be provocative in that sense and just get people because I don't mind a good argument. And I can stay calm and have that rational conversation. And hopefully others will too. In the UK and bigger, more developed workplace environments, we have tons of legislation and it is enforced. And we have tribunals. We have a different court system. We have a lot of different commissions set up for different minority groups. We have a lot of mechanisms that we don't have here yet. And I keep thinking, in Cyprus, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We could just take a few of those, copy them, do them here. Why not? But it's getting better. It's a lot better than it used to be. So I'm very optimistic.
Thank you, Katerina. So LGBT inclusion, we can summarize that it's more than policies. It's about how you feel, how you treat others, and how you coexist with others in your workspace.
Yeah. And I think it's also about what we said about leadership being at the forefront, making sure that that's the case in their workspace. The responsibilities with them.
Of course, leadership matters.
Yeah.
So, thank you for watching us today. Consider, does your workplace feel truly safe, brave, inclusive?